September 14th, 1944, Camp Hearn, Texas. Obergefreiter Klaus Richter held the slice of white bread in both hands as if it were made of gold, real wheat, pure white flour, no sawdust, no potato peelings, no grounder corns, just bread. The kind his mother used to bake before 1939, before the war, before everything changed. Across the mess hall, 200 German prisoners sat in stunned silence during their first meal in American captivity. 2 thick slices of white bread, butter, scrambled eggs, bacon, coffee with real sugar and milk. One meal contained more food than most had seen in a single day during the final months in Tunisia. Hauptmann Werner Schulz sat beside Richter, staring at his untouched plate. "They want us to believe this is normal," Schulz whispered. "This abundance. It must be propaganda." Richter was thinking about his last letter from home. His wife Greta had written about the new ration cards, 280 grams of bread per person per week when available. Often it wasn't. When it was, the bread was 40% sawdust and wood pulp. The children cried because it hurt their stomachs. Now Richter sat in an American prison camp, eating real white bread with butter while his family starved. Prisoners were supposed to suffer. Families at home were supposed to be cared for. Yet here sat the evidence that everything was inverted, that the fundamental promises of National Socialism were lies. When Generaloberst von Arnim surrendered in May 1943, approximately 250,000 German soldiers entered Allied captivity expecting harsh treatment. Instead, they encountered American K-rations containing more food than they'd seen in months. At processing camps in North Africa, the US Army served 3 hot meals daily with foods that had vanished from German military rations by 1942. During the Atlantic crossing, Liberty ships provided 3,500 calories daily. On July 4, 1943, aboard the USS General M.B. Stewart, prisoners were served ice cream. Men whose children had forgotten what it tasted like received it as casual dessert while sailing to captivity. At Camp Hearn and 500 other camps across 45 states, white bread appeared 3 times daily. Unlimited quantities, pure wheat flour without adulterants, the bread that had disappeared from Germany in 1940. Stabsfeldwebel Ernst Wagner wrote to his wife in September 1943. "The bread here is pure white wheat flour, fresh daily as much as we want. The Americans throw away more bread each meal than our family received in a month. Maria, I eat better as a prisoner than as a soldier, and far better than you eat at home." American mess halls routinely discarded food Germans would have treasured. Day-old bread thrown away, butter slightly separated, discarded. This wasn't cruelty, just American abundance. They had so much that waste meant nothing. The letters from Germany shattered remaining illusions. Richter's wife Greta wrote in November 1943. "The new bread ration is officially 280 grams per week, but we are lucky to receive 200. The bread now contains 40% wood pulp and sawdust, 20% potato flour, and the remainder is wheat mixed with ground acorns. The children hate it. Little Klaus asked me yesterday why bread hurts his stomach. I had no answer." German civilian rations by late 1943 provided approximately 1,200 to 1,500 calories daily, barely sufficient for survival. Women, children and elderly civilians were slowly starving while the regime maintained full rations for party officials. The gap between official rations and actual distribution grew wider each month. Meanwhile, Klaus Richter received 3,300 to 3,600 calories daily. His breakfast alone exceeded his family's entire daily caloric intake. Every meal became an indictment of the system he had fought for. Every slice of white bread represented the broken promises of National Socialism. Hauptmann Schulz documented everything in a hidden diary. Daily prisoner ration, approximately 3,400 calories. Bread, 6 slices, daily minimum. Meat, 250 grams daily, more in one day than German civilians received weekly. Sugar, unlimited. Butter, 30 grams daily, twice the weekly German civilian ration. Milk, 1 quart daily available, more than German children received weekly. The bread itself became a symbol of inverted reality. In Germany, bread was precious beyond measure, every crumb saved. Stale bread soaked in water to make it edible, crusts ground into breadcrumbs to stretch other foods. At Camp Herne, prisoners watched American guards throw away half-eaten sandwiches, entire loaves of slightly stale bread tossed into garbage bins. The casual abundance was more disturbing than any deliberate cruelty. By December 1943, prisoners began requesting permission to send food packages to Germany. Using wages earned from labor, 80 cents daily, prisoners purchased American products to mail home. Chocolate bars for 5 cents, coffee for 40 cents per pound. The irony was profound. German prisoners in America sending food to German civilians in Germany. Christmas 1943 revealed the full extent of role reversal. American church groups sent 50,000 Christmas packages to German prisoners. Meanwhile, German families sent packages to prisoners when they could, containing hand-knitted socks and occasionally small portions of food saved from their own meager rations. Mothers were sending food to imprisoned sons who ate better than they did. Richter received a package from Greta in January 1944. Inside were 2 pairs of wool socks and a small hard biscuit wrapped in paper. The note explained that she had saved her bread ration for 2 weeks to have enough flour to bake him something. The biscuit was made from their children's reduced rations, ground acorn flour mixed with a tiny amount of saved wheat. Richter couldn't eat it. He couldn't throw it away. He kept it in his footlocker for months, a talisman of the grotesque inversion his life had become. He was a prisoner living better than free citizens of the nation he had served. The sawdust bread that dominated German civilian diet by 1944 represented industrial desperation. German food scientists had developed bread extenders using wood pulp, processed to be technically digestible but providing almost no nutrition. The sawdust bread caused digestive problems, stomach pain, and provided barely any caloric value. Children particularly suffered, their developing bodies unable to extract nourishment from what was essentially filler. Prisoners working on American farms witnessed agricultural abundance that made German production look primitive. In Nebraska, prisoners helped harvest wheat on farms where single families produced more grain than entire German villages. The mechanization, the scale, the casual attitude toward abundance all reinforce the lesson that America operated on a different level of civilization. At a bakery in upstate New York, German prisoners watched industrial bread production that exceeded anything in Germany. Conveyor belts, automated mixers, ovens that produced thousands of loaves daily. Pure white flour, no adulterants, no sawdust, no extenders. The waste-alone dough scraps and misshapen loaves fed to pigs would have fed German cities. Obergefreiter Franz Weber, assigned to the bakery, wrote in his diary, "Today, I helped make more bread than my entire hometown receives in a month. The flour is so pure, so white. I remember before the war when mother would save for weeks to afford fine white flour for Christmas stolen. Here, it's the only flour they use, every day, for everything." Gefreiter Hans Müller received a letter from his mother in February 1944. "The bread is no longer bread," she wrote. "It's 40% sawdust mixed with potato peelings and whatever else they can grind up. It sits heavy in the stomach and provides no energy. Your sister Elsa, who works in the munitions factory, fainted last week from hunger. The doctor said she was malnourished, but there is no additional food available." Major Paul Newland, commanding the Special Projects Division monitoring prisoner attitudes, reported in March 1944. The realization that their families starve while they eat abundantly has broken more Nazi convictions than any propaganda program could achieve. They see daily evidence that American productive capacity exceeds German capacity by orders of magnitude. They understand viscerally through bread and butter that Germany has lost. By summer 1944, letters revealed catastrophic deterioration of civilian conditions. Richter's wife Greta wrote in July, "Klaus, I must tell you the truth. The children are starving. Not dramatic movie starvation, but the slow, grinding hunger that never ends. Margaret has stopped growing. The doctor says her development is stunted from malnutrition. Young Klaus, only 8 years old, looks like an old man, his face gaunt, his ribs showing. The bread ration this week was 180 grams, more sawdust than flour." This letter broke Richter completely. That evening, he sat in the mess hall staring at his dinner. Steak, potatoes with butter, carrots, bread, coffee, and pie. His children were starving while he ate steak. The Reich had promised to protect German families while soldiers fought. Instead, the Reich starved families while American enemies fed their prisoners abundantly. The camp chaplain, Father Anton Müller, began conducting informal counseling sessions. Men came to him not for religious guidance, but for help processing the psychological trauma of living better than their families. "How do we bear this?" they asked. "How do we eat when we know they starve?" Father Müller offered perspective. "The American abundance is not your fault," he said. "You did not create German scarcity. You cannot help your families by refusing American food. What you can do is learn from this experience. See clearly what National Socialism delivered, lies wrapped in propaganda, while reality starved. Remember this when Germany must be rebuilt." Hauptmann Schulz called together the men of his former command in August 1944. "Gentlemen," he began, "we must face a truth that destroys everything we believed. Our families starve while we eat like kings. The Americans, whom we were told were weak and decadent, possess such abundance they waste more than our nation produces. We fought for lies. White bread wasn't just food. It was proof that National Socialism had failed in the most fundamental way possible. It couldn't feed its own people while the democratic enemy fed even prisoners generously. The autumn of 1944 brought increasingly desperate letters. Richter received a photograph from his wife. Greta, who had been pleasantly rounded when he left for war in 1942, was skeletal. Their daughter Margaret, aged 10, looked 6. Young Klaus was a ghost of the healthy boy Richter remembered. He showed the photograph to Feldwebel Otto Schmidt. Schmidt wept openly. "My God," he said, "what have we done? We fight for the Reich while the Reich starves our families. Look at what our glorious 1,000-year empire has delivered. Our children starve while we, prisoners, eat American abundance." December 1944 brought the worst letters yet. The Ardennes offensive had diverted remaining food supplies to military use. Greta wrote, "They have reduced bread rations again. We now receive 120 grams weekly when available. It is 50% sawdust. The children cry from hunger pains at night. Klaus, I no longer know what Germany means. Is it this hunger, this endless deprivation? Is this the prosperity the Führer promised?" Christmas 1944 represented the nadir of German prisoner psychology. American churches sent packages. The camp served a feast: turkey, ham, stuffing, vegetables, pies, ice cream. Prisoners ate mechanically, tasting nothing, thinking only of families starving in Germany. Meanwhile, American civilians complained about wartime food rationing. Their sugar ration, £2 monthly, exceeded what Germans received in a year. Even rationed, Americans maintained consumption levels Germans considered impossible luxury. American agricultural and industrial capacity operated on a scale Germany couldn't match. By January 1945, the truth was inescapable. German prisoners lived in camps that exceeded the living standards of German civilians. They ate food that German generals would envy. They had electricity, hot water, heated buildings, medical care. Their families in Germany had none of these things. Obergefreiter Richter wrote a letter to Greta in February 1945. "I must tell you the truth, my beloved wife. I eat better as a prisoner than I ever ate as a soldier, and far better than you eat at home. The Americans feed us white bread, real wheat flour without sawdust, 3 times daily, unlimited quantities. Everything we were told about American weakness was a lie. The war is lost. No nation that starves its children while enemies feed prisoners can claim moral authority. The arrival of newsreels showing concentration camps in April 1945 completed the psychological collapse. America, the nation Germans had been told was weak, liberated death camps where Germans had starved and murdered millions. American soldiers shared their rations with survivors while German guards had starved prisoners systematically. When Germany surrendered in May 1945, German prisoners faced repatriation to a destroyed homeland. They returned carrying knowledge of American abundance and awareness of German depravity. They had lived in a parallel reality where enemies treated them better than their own government treated civilians. Obergefreiter Klaus Richter returned to Germany in August 1946. He weighed more than when captured, healthy from American food. His wife Greta weighed 30 kilograms less than when he left. Their daughter's growth had been permanently stunted by malnutrition. Young Klaus had rickets from vitamin deficiency. They stood in the rubble of Cologne railway station, reunited but separated by vastly different experiences. Greta said simply, "I'm glad you were fed, Klaus. At least one of us didn't starve." But there was no comfort in these words, only the acknowledgement of a truth that would haunt them forever. Thousands of returned prisoners carried this knowledge into post-war Germany. They became unlikely apostles of democracy, having experienced firsthand that free societies could feed their people and treat enemies humanely, while totalitarian regimes starved civilians and murdered prisoners. The white bread they had eaten in American camps became a powerful symbol of what Germany could become. Klaus Richter opened a bakery in 1952. He made only white bread, pure wheat flour, no sawdust, no adulterants. He never forgot the bread he had eaten in Camp Hearn, Texas. That bread had represented everything National Socialism had promised and failed to deliver. On the bakery's opening day, Greta stood beside him as the first loaves emerged from ovens bought with loans from a program funded partly by American aid. She held a slice of perfect white bread, smelled it, and wept. "This is what we fought for without knowing," she said. "Not conquest, not territory, not racial purity, just bread, real bread, bread that doesn't hurt our children's stomachs." The transformation wasn't unique to the Richter family. Across West Germany, former prisoners of war who had experienced American abundance became architects of reconstruction. They had seen American efficiency, American humanity, American prosperity. They brought these lessons to German rebuilding. The Marshall Plan succeeded partly because men like Richter, who had witnessed American productivity firsthand, advocated for American methods. In the 1950s, as West Germany experienced its economic miracle, the contrast with East Germany became stark. West Germany, rebuilt with democratic principles and American aid, achieved prosperity. East Germany, under Soviet totalitarian control, struggled with shortages. The lesson was clear. Freedom produced abundance. Tyranny produced scarcity. The white bread that German prisoners had eaten in American camps wasn't just food. It was prophecy of what Germany could become. The story of German prisoners eating white bread while their families ate sawdust reveals the fundamental bankruptcy of National Socialism, a regime that promised prosperity through strength, delivered starvation through incompetence. A democracy the Nazis had mocked as weak demonstrated strength through generosity and abundance through freedom. The numbers told an undeniable story. By December 1943, over 371,000 German prisoners were held in American camps. Each received approximately 3,400 calories daily. Their families in Germany received 1,200 to 1,500 calories when rations were available. American prisoners ate white bread made from pure wheat flour. German civilians ate bread that was 40% to 50% sawdust by 1944. The psychological impact extended beyond individual families. An entire generation of German soldiers returned home with knowledge that shattered Nazi mythology. They had seen with their own eyes that American productive capacity exceeded German capacity by orders of magnitude. They had experienced firsthand that democratic societies could feed their people while totalitarian regimes starved civilians. The dairy products told their own story. At Camp Herne, milk sat in unlimited pitchers on every table. In Germany, milk was strictly rationed, reserved primarily for young children. Most German adults hadn't tasted fresh milk in years. The contrast was visceral, undeniable, and psychologically devastating. The waste particularly haunted returning prisoners. They had watched Americans throw away more food in a day than German families received in a week. Half-eaten sandwiches discarded, entire loaves of slightly stale bread in garbage bins, day-old butter thrown out. This wasn't deliberate cruelty meant to demoralize prisoners. It was simply American abundance, so great that waste meant nothing. When prisoners tried to explain this to German civilians after the war, many didn't believe them. The stories seemed too fantastical. Ice cream served on ships crossing the Atlantic, unlimited white bread 3 times daily, butter wasted, milk in unlimited quantities. It contradicted everything Germans knew about wartime scarcity. But the prisoners' healthy appearance, their weight gain during captivity, their detailed knowledge of American abundance, all confirmed the impossible truth. Today, Klaus Richter's grandson runs the bakery in Cologne. On the wall hangs a photograph of his grandfather in American prison camp, standing with other German POWs, all healthy and well-fed. Beside it hangs the photograph Greta sent in 1944, showing a starving family in ruined Germany. Between these images lies the truth that transformed a generation. American enemies provided bread, while German leaders provided sawdust. This simple fact, repeated in millions of meals across hundreds of camps, did more to defeat Nazism than any bomb or bullet. The prisoners who ate that bread carried its lesson home. They became witnesses to democratic abundance and testimonies to totalitarian failure. Their story, written in slices of white bread, remains a powerful reminder that true strength lies not in military might or racial ideology, but in the simple ability to feed one's people while treating even enemies with dignity. The white bread of American prison camps defeated the sawdust bread of Nazi Germany more completely than armies ever could, one meal at a time, until every prisoner understood that everything they had fought for was a lie and everything they had been taught to despise was truth.